Yes, welcome everyone. Cannabis News with Joe Klare. It's October 25th, 2018. Presented as always by the Marijuana Times. Check out marijuanatimes.org. A bunch of great articles, our social media links. Click the video tab and you'll find this show as well, marijuanatimes.org. Today, talking about an article I wrote, well actually about a couple articles that I wrote. DCMJ in Washington, D.C. took issue with something that I wrote a few weeks ago. They responded and I put it all together in a longer post. It's just linked in the description of this video, of course, as all the stories that I talk about. Also, another cannabis company has reached the New York Stock Exchange and a new legal cannabis sales record in Colorado. All of that coming up. But first, of course, Cannabis News is brought to you by NatureSide, nature-side.com, and their organic all-natural pesticides. Grow safe and poison-free. Be regulatory compliant in the state that you're growing in. And, of course, you don't want to use harmful chemicals on what you are growing. You accomplish all of these things with NatureSide, nature-side.com. Go check them out. They're a proud sponsor of Cannabis News. This first story, as mentioned by yours truly at marijuanatimes.org. DCMJ responds to article about arrest outside Representative Andy Harris's office. So basically, a couple weeks ago, there was an incident. A couple protesters were arrested outside Representative Andy Harris's office in the Capitol building, the Capitol office building in Washington, D.C. Harris has blocked for years funding to Washington, D.C. to implement regulations and sales for the recreational legalization measure, which passed in 2014. So basically, they've had legal possession and growing there since 2014, but not legal sales because Congress has blocked it. And one of the people most instrumental in blocking it has been Maryland Representative Andy Harris. So there was a protest outside his office. They had a protester tried to get into his office, apparently, tried to walk through the door. The protester says that they closed the door on her. There's a link to a video of the incident in the article. It's a very long article. I'm not going to go, point by point. You can read it yourself because, like I said, I wanted to include everything. As I mentioned in the article, maybe my first article, I was a little too brief. What I was trying to do in the first article that I wrote, the one that DCMJ and Chris Furnish from DCMJ objected to and sent an email to the Marijuana Times about, after the incident, there was a protester who said that she was injured, or somebody, Representative Harris, said that he was injured somehow with his wrists. I don't know. And I said in the beginning of the article, I said, allegedly, this was what happened. I was basing it on a Washington Post story about the incident. Now, I used that article or that issue as a springboard to talk about prohibitionists and the moral high ground when it comes to cannabis. And when it comes to the use of violence to lock up cannabis users. Prohibition is based on using force against peaceful people. So I was using Representative Harris's response to the incident to make that point. That even though I don't condone violence, which I mentioned in the article, prohibitionists don't have a moral high ground when it comes to this issue because their policies directly lead to peaceful people having violence used against them, even though they have not infringed on the rights of anyone else. Well, Chris Furnish of DCMJ took issue with that. Their complete email is in the article as well. Basically saying that I'm misrepresented. Somehow they got from the article that I believed, I think, Representative Harris's version of events, and that's what I was basing things on. They said it was biased and one-sided against DCMJ, that I misrepresented people, and as I point out in the second article, I didn't misrepresent anything. I said allegedly when it comes to the incident and what happened. They didn't like the fact that I didn't reach out to them for their version of events of why they were protesting. But I mentioned in the article why they were protesting. I just mentioned it again here. Representative Harris is blocking the full implementation of legalization in Washington, D.C., which is a very good reason to protest something. I use what Representative Harris said about violence to comment on prohibitionists not having the moral high ground when it comes to violence. Now, in the second article, like I said, is very, very long. I included everything. I included big chunks of press releases from DCMJ, the video. You can see for yourself what happened. All that's fine. But to say that my original article was misrepresentative of DCMJ or biased against people who support cannabis legalization is, in my estimation, incorrect. Again, as I point out in the article, I don't pretend to be unbiased. I don't pretend to be fair and balanced. There's no objectivity here. Well, there's some objectivity when looking at these issues, but I don't hide the fact that I'm biased in favor of cannabis legalization. I'm against cannabis prohibition. I think all nonviolent marijuana offenders in jail, no matter where they are, should immediately be released. If they just have nonviolent marijuana offenses, they walk out the door immediately, right now. Maybe this paperwork has to be done. I don't know. That's not my purview. I'm just telling you what I'm for. In any case, it's up there for anyone who wants to look at it. You can decide for yourself. The original article is linked. You can decide if that was unfair. You can decide if what they said to me was unfair. You can decide if what I said in response to them is unfair. In any case, it's for you to decide. I have no interest in battling people who are for cannabis legalization. I supported Washington, D.C. I wrote articles in support of what Washington, D.C. was doing. I publicly talked about support of what they were doing in Washington, D.C. in 2014 with legalization, and it passed with 70% of the vote. That's great. And I'm against Representative Harris using his clout or whatever influence he has to block the full implementation of what voters voted on in Washington, D.C. If that is not clear enough, then I don't know. Maybe I need to go to a clarity school. See? It's the kind of stuff I'm talking about right there. My communication skills are second to none. This next story is from, so I've talked about myself enough so far in this show. My next story is from MarketWatch.com. Canada's Aurora cannabis stock to start trading on the NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange, on October 23rd, which was a couple days ago. Canadian weed company Aurora Cannabis, ACB is their ticker symbol. They've been approved for trading on the New York Stock Exchange. The stocks are currently traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange as well as on the U.S. over-the-counter market. The news came a day after cannabis was fully legalized for recreational purposes in Canada, which of course was October 17th, Weed Day. I don't know if that's what they're officially going to call it, but they should. Maybe. Probably not. Not say it out loud. I'm not as enamored with the idea as I was when the idea was still in my head, unspoken. But that's why we say things out loud sometimes. That's why we talk to ourselves sometimes, because when you say something out loud, maybe it's a dumb idea. And I'm thinking that Weed Day is not going to become the official moniker for October 17th in Canada, but I may be wrong. And if I am wrong and it does, well, remember what I said, and please give me credit somehow. Desperate for the attention. But anyway, there are now several cannabis companies on the New York Stock Exchange. It's another example showing the mainstreaming and the normalization of cannabis. And in 20 or 30 years, people who are 20 or 30 years old, they're going to wonder why this was ever an issue. Now, which we're wondering why it's an issue now, but in the future when it's no longer an issue and weed is just as ubiquitous around the world or in popular culture and in people, as alcohol, we won't talk about it anymore. It won't be a big deal. And they'll look back 30 years ago and they say, wow, that was all that battle, all that over cannabis. It's kind of weird. It seemed like a waste of time. And, well, as someone who's in the middle of it, indeed, it is. What I'm doing right now is an extreme waste of time. It should not exist. I shouldn't have to sit here and talk about the inanities of marijuana prohibition and the problems and the horrific side effects of the policies and all of that. I shouldn't have to talk about any of that. It shouldn't exist. But here it is. Here I am. Here you are. This is what we're doing. It's the last story from DenverPost.com. Colorado cracks $1 billion in annual marijuana sales in record time, generating $200 million in tax revenue. Marijuana sales in Colorado exceeded $1 billion as of August of this year. The tax revenues of those sales coming in over $200 million. This according to a report from the Colorado Department of Revenue and its Marijuana Enforcement Division. It's the earliest point in any of the 4 years Colorado has illegal recreational marijuana sales that combined medical and rec sales have cracked the $1 billion mark. And growth is slowing, as they point out in the article, which is, as supply comes up to meet demand, annual growth, the percentage-wise, will continue to drop, even if the total continues to go up for a while longer. 80% of all plants in the state as of June are grown in Denver, Boulder, El Paso, and Pueblo counties. Edible sales are up 13.8% in the first 6 months of this year as opposed to the first 6 months of last year. Concentrate sales in the same period are up almost 95%, showing that, edibles and concentrates are hard to make. And if you have to make them at home, most people will go with just, flour. But if there are more options, if you can just go and buy a brownie or go and buy some concentrates and pop it in something or pop it in your mouth or whatever, then more people are going to go that route. None of this is surprising, but yet, it's good to monitor the yardsticks of the industry. And that's one of the many functions that I serve here at Cannabis News. Thank you for watching and listening. Make sure you search the Marijuana Times on YouTube and Vimeo to find the show. Also on Apple Podcasts if you want the audio-only version. MarijuanaTimes.org. Click the video tab. You can find us that way as well. Thank you to Natureside, nature-side.com, and their organic, all-natural pesticides. Thanks to all of you who watch and listen and share the videos. And we'll see you next time right here on Cannabis News.